Thanks, Kate. And let me first start off by thanking all the people who are joining us for this call today. These are the people who are at the front lines fighting day in and day out, and we'll hear from their stories in a minute. And I want to thank all the folks from the press who are joining us. So sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees, and I think that's where I want to start. And I'll start with the trees. Monday, the Trump administration issued a shocking, sweeping memo that caused widespread chaos, not just here in Illinois and in the 10th congressional district, but across the country. On Tuesday, there was a national outcry. Democrats, including the New Democratic Coalition, which I have the privilege of leading, called out the administration for literally stealing money from children, seniors, veterans, first responders, cancer patients, and the list goes on and on and on. They were stealing money from hardworking American families and communities, effectively to pay for tax cuts for the people we saw sitting in the front row of the inauguration, billionaires like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, and Trump's family and friends. On Tuesday morning, my phone literally started ringing off the hook with panic. I had people calling saying, would they be able to access their Medicaid payments? How would social service groups, depending on federal grants, be able to serve the people they support? Folks without shelter in the cold, people struggling with addiction, students with autism. Again, the list goes on and on. And what happens to federal funding that goes to firefighters and police departments? What about the local infrastructure projects that are already underway, repairing dangerous bridges, building new roads? What about the support for school lunch programs and children in need? By Tuesday afternoon, we saw the administration was already backtracking. Several states' attorneys general, as well as nonprofit organizations, filed suit against this obviously illegal action. And moments before the memo was to go into effect at 4 o'clock local time, a federal court thankfully blocked the freeze. And after all that, yesterday, the president rescinded the memo. But let's take a step back and look at the big picture. Trump's sweeping order invoked a near immediate freeze on nearly all federal grants and loans that the government issues. We're talking about $3 trillion. In terms of scale, where existential grants to communities are often measured in thousands or sometimes millions of dollars, $3 trillion is $3 million grants. And remember, many of these grants are contractually obligated and are the difference between essential services in our communities staying open and available and being shut down. The effort is unlawful. The Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974 effectively recognizes that the Constitution vests the power of the purse with Congress. It is Congress that decides where to spend money and how much to spend. The Impoundment Control Act requires the president to spend those funds as defined by Congress in a timely manner. And let's be clear-eyed. This bungled effort was the first, not the last attempt we're going to see. The administration is dead set on defying congressional authority, defying the law, and effectively transferring massive amounts of money from the American people to a few oligarchs. President Trump is going to continue to try to cut funding for critical programs the American people need for healthcare, law enforcement, housing, education, childcare, etc., to make room for more tax cuts for the wealthy and large corporations. I want to be very clear that although there has been a reprieve, I am incredibly concerned that this president and the administration will continue to pursue its effort to defund so many of the local projects and organizations that support our community and that people depend on. That may come in a different form than the sweeping freeze on funding that was put in place earlier this week, but is absolutely something that we should all be expecting and be prepared to respond to. So I want to make sure you hear a bit from the incredible local leaders here today that run organizations, not operations, that serve our neighbors and can directly share what's at stake in their funding, or if their funding were to be frozen, cut, or ended. That includes Eric Reinhart, our Lake County State's Attorney, Wendy Ivey, Associate Executive Director of Zacharias Center, Laura Fry, Executive Director of Live for Lolly, Rob Anthony, President of Community Partners for Affordable Housing, Marlene Copeland, the Executive Director of Shalva, and we'll close with Sandy Hart, the Lake County Board Chair. These organizations collectively receive millions in federal funding to serve the people in our community. They make so many lives better and our community safer and healthier. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhart.
Good morning. First, I want to thank Congressman Schneider for his leadership on this issue and so many other issues for the people of the 10th District and Lake County in Washington. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you to the press for joining us. My name is Eric Reinhardt. I'm the Lake County State's Attorney. I am proud to lead 150 professionals in this office who work on an hourly basis. Many of our people work around the clock to protect the residents of Lake County and to serve as the voice of the victims in the courthouse. Federal funding is critical to this mission of making the people of Lake County safe. It is critical to the work with respect to everything from victim counselors to human trafficking prosecutors to therapists in the space of gun violence prevention. Financial partnerships with our federal agencies account for nearly 20%. I'm going to say that again, nearly 20% of our yearly budget. These federal funds, which President Trump has callously threatened, fund the core programs of this office. And these core programs are working for the people of Lake County. We have always put serving victims at the heart of our work. Our federal grants go back 25 years across presidential administrations, across parties, across different states' attorneys. Our victim funds go back over 25 years. And this federal funding that the president attempted to freeze just a few days ago pay for the professionals who sit in the courtrooms, who hold the hands of the victims, who refer them to services, who are there when the victims are going through the trauma that often accompanies crime. They make sure that that victim's voice is heard in the Lake County courtrooms. But if federal funding were ever stopped again, or if it were stopped in the future, the salaries of these professionals, these public servants, would be cut. That is simply unacceptable. When I became state's attorney, we had prosecuted 0 human traffickers in the 2 years before, from 2018 to 2020. We now have 20 active investigations, human trafficking investigations, with respect to sex trafficking and labor trafficking here in Lake County, and we are prosecuting traffickers in the courtroom. But this human trafficking work is directly funded by a federal grant, and it constitutes a direct partnership with a Safe Place, one of our leading 501c3s in the county, as well as law enforcement agencies. Defunding this program and the very prosecutors who put dangerous traffickers behind bars is wrong, and it is dangerous for the people of Lake County. Finally, Lake County has seen a 45% reduction in gun violence in those areas that are served by our federally funded program in the area of gun violence. And Congressman Schneider and Chair Hart have been critical in building this gun violence prevention work here in Lake County. This reduction of 40% would absolutely be threatened by a loss of federal funds. We would lose potentially 15 street outreach workers if we ever lost these federal funds. And our work here has been 2 to 3 times the national average because we are getting into the community to reduce gun violence. In 2024, we saw one of the lowest homicide rates ever. And it is because of the professionals in this office that I've been speaking about. The prosecutors, the street outreach workers, the therapists, and the victim specialists who serve victims and survivors every day. I would urge everyone to whoever hears these comments or when these comments are reported to reach out to the administration, regardless of party, to say that we cannot defund safety in Lake County. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. Let me turn it over now to Wendy Ivey, the Associate Executive Director of Zacharias Center.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Wendy Ivey, and I have been at the Zacharias Sexual Abuse Center in Gurnee for 25 years. So I have seen a lot of things, but this seems a little unprecedented. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to this. The Zacharias Sexual Abuse Center, or Z Center, provides advocacy, counseling, prevention education services to survivors of sexual violence at any time in their life, and have been doing that for 40 years. In the past year, Z Center has served over 600 adults and children survivors with legal advocacy, medical advocacy, counseling, and other critical supportive services. While we're thankful for the recent news about the memo rescission, we're still unclear about the long-term status of a potential federal funding freeze. So we're remaining concerned about the uncertainty of the particular funding that's critical and supports the work that we do. The federal funding that Z-Center receives from pass-through sources, such as ICASA, which is the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, it helps us to sustain the vital therapeutic and clinical services that help to alleviate trauma of sexual assault and abuse for the survivors that we see, and helps prevent the re-traumatization while they're healing. The majority of our counseling team are the folks that are funded through this federal pass-through funding. And I like the word that State's Attorney Reinhardt said, this is unacceptable, that we can't cut counselors, we can't cut salaries. And one of the things that I heard recently is, even if this were to happen, the work doesn't stop. Offenders still don't stop, and we still have to do that. And we'd be doing it with less staff. And that just puts additional stress that's already happening in our nonprofits. Please keep in mind that nonprofits wear many hats, and we need and want to pay the program staff with these monies. And so the federal funding is extremely significant for that. As legislators, service providers, and community members, we need to stay vigilant to ensure that federal funding for human service organizations such as ours stay intact. We do receive pass-through federal funding, and not receiving that could have significant impacts on the work that we do, the clients that we see. And what I'll end with is, we really want to maintain at the Zacharias Center, as many rape crisis centers throughout Illinois, we maintain the philosophy that we want to remove barriers from survivors. It's hard enough to come forward and talk about what happens, and we want to remove the barrier of having to pay for those services. So these types of funding sources are incredibly important to make sure that survivors can still come forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And let me turn it over now to Laura Fry, the Executive Director of Live for Lolly.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Congressman Schneider, for always being our champion and for including our voice in this conference. Live for Lolly has been serving Northern Illinois for over 15 years as the second largest harm reduction provider in the state of Illinois. We provide services for individuals, families, and communities impacted by substance use and mental health. We serve 8 counties, providing much needed support, education, and harm reduction. 65% of our budget is grant funded. In the immediate, losing grant funds will cause us to shut down our Cook County program, as we are a subrecipient of a federal grant. Our Cook County program serves the largest amount of participants. Let me share what that will look like by the numbers. In 2024, Live for Lolly served 3,200 people in mobile outreach in Cook County alone. Another 1,000 people engaged with at community events, and educational trainings provided for another 500. 4,700 people who would not have received services were we not there. Other programs are maintained through grants from the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Department of Human Services, Substance Use and Recovery and Prevention Division. If they lose funding, we will also be closing our Winnebago, Boone, and Kane County programs. We distributed 4,918 doses of Narcan, the opioid reversal drug, 17,696 drug testing strips, 8,345 harm reduction kits, 71,115 condoms, as well as food, clothing, and other essentials. We navigated 21 participants into treatment and countless others into housing. Live for Lolly helps connect individuals with medical and mental health providers, transports to hospitals and treatment centers, doctor's appointments, and peer support groups. And please hear me, I am not being melodramatic when I say this. Losing this funding will cause deaths. Losing this funding will increase HIV and viral hepatitis infections. These people deserve better. They deserve to be treated with dignity and compassion. They deserve to live. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Laura. And let me now turn it over to Rob Anthony, the president of the Community Partners for Affordable Housing.
Good morning. My name is Rob Anthony. I'm the president at Community Partners for Affordable Housing. CEPA is a nonprofit organization that provides a diverse range of housing services, assisting over 1,000 households per year with services like affordable rental housing, affordable homeownership programs, down payment assistance, home repair programs, foreclosure prevention, and many other housing-related services. As it relates to our work, the crisis seems to be averted at the moment, but we definitely remain very concerned about the future. We have low-income clients and seniors, persons with disabilities who rely on housing assistance and other federally funded programs. And so, the conversations that we've been having over the last couple of days, tenants are saying rent is due on Friday. We don't know if we're going to get our housing assistance. And, we need to make a choice between paying for rent or paying for food or paying for medication. We don't know how to make that kind of decision. And likewise, landlords that participate in our programs were contacting us. And they were saying, we don't know what we should do. Should we file eviction notices if we don't get rent payments over the next couple of weeks, because we don't know how long this pause could possibly last. And in terms of some of our other programs, we have home repair programs that are federally funded that help make critical life safety and health repairs for low-income households, and as well as accessibility repairs for persons with disabilities. So we have, construction projects that are in the middle of construction with these low-income seniors and persons with disabilities, and they're saying, we are contractors, they don't know if they're going to get paid, so they don't know whether they should continue working on these homes or not. Some of these homes are, their kitchens are torn out because they're in the midst of construction and they didn't know what was going to happen. We have various other construction activities that are federally funded. We are developing a 34-unit senior housing development in Libertyville. And again, without the federal funds coming through to pay those contractors, we did not know what that was going to look like. We have new homes that are being developed as community integrated living arrangements for persons with developmental disabilities. Again, those are mid-construction, and there's a lot of questions over whether that construction could continue. We have other new townhomes that are being developed for low-income families. We have down payment assistance programs. So there are people who had homes under contract to purchase as first-time home buyers, and they were given the commitment that they were approved for down payment assistance to support them in their home ownership endeavors. And then there was question whether they would receive those dollars. And so home deals were being questioned. Are those going to fall apart? Are people going to lose the money that they already invested in trying to buy that home, such as paying for home inspections and appraisals and things like that? Is the home going to get closed? And so it was a very challenging past couple of days for a lot of low-income residents in Lake County. And I think it was really the surprise nature of this that took everyone by surprise and created a lot of chaos. And so again, it seems to be averted from our perspective at this immediate point, but we remain concerned about what's going to happen in the future.
Great, thanks, Rob. And let me now turn it over to Marlene Copeland, the Executive Director of SHALVA.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you as well for this opportunity. My name is Marlene Copeland, and I'm the Executive Director of SHALVA. SHALVA is the oldest independent domestic violence agency in the country, specifically founded to serve the Jewish community. SHALVA has been serving the greater Chicagoland community for over 38 years. Our clients come primarily from the north side of Chicago and throughout the northern suburbs, but we're licensed to serve anyone in Illinois. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience abuse in their lifetimes. Shalva provides free, trauma-informed clinical services to anyone who self-identifies as Jewish or is or was in a relationship with someone who is Jewish and experienced some kind of intimate partner abuse. Clients who receive therapy are also entitled to some legal support, including orders of protection, and sometimes some financial support. Shalva received its 3rd grant from the Department of Justice's Office of Violence Against Women in 2023, intended for underserved populations. The grant we receive supports the development and implementation of outreach strategies and direct services targeted at victims of domestic violence and their needs. In addition to the support of those direct services, the grant underwrites 2 part-time staff people that were specifically hired to work on the outreach and education goals defined in our application, including providing training to groups of law enforcement, social service agencies within the Jewish community, and lay individuals, both within and outside the community, who are uniquely positioned to see warning signs of domestic abuse so that they can better recognize and appropriately respond to them. Recognizing that Shalva's clients have a wide range of needs and some might not access secular resources, under the terms of the grant, Shalva has a collaborative relationship with our partner, the ARC, an organization that provides safety net services, food, healthcare, and more to low-income Jews in Chicago. All of this is at risk if federal funding is frozen. Shalva is part of 2 umbrella organizations, the Network and the Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Abuse. All of the member organizations are committed to ensuring survivors are safe and to the work we do to break the cycle of domestic abuse in our communities. We provide vital services that governments cannot. And in fact, the domestic violence services we provide are vital in preventing future crime. Without stable funding, domestic violence service providers like Shalva will not be able to meet the needs of survivors in communities across Illinois.
Great, thank you, Marlene. And let me close out with our Lake County Board Chair, Sandy Hart.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this opportunity to talk about just how important federal funding is to all of us here in the state of Illinois. It impacts every aspect of our life, and freezing these funds would negatively impact every person who lives and works in Lake County. And some people, as we heard from the other speakers today, are going to feel those effects earlier than others, but everyone will feel it. And it could be just in projects that don't come to fruition. And I'm going to speak about that in a moment, but it's everything from vaccinations to well child visits to assistance for people with disabilities. It's first responder equipment, it's job training programs, it's critical infrastructure. And getting that federal funding, in addition to other grants that we get and local and our own dollars, that's how we protect the life and the welfare of our residents. We rely on these, I'll call them reimbursement dollars, right? Because the state of Illinois gives money to the federal government and we get back a fraction of that money. So we rely on these reimbursement dollars for roadway improvement, law enforcement, drinking water, sewer systems, stormwater control, and so many programs, some of which we heard about today, that keep our community healthy and safe. And we also receive federal funds to assist people who are experiencing homelessness. Last year, we saw a 75% increase in family homelessness, and that federal funding helps people get back on their feet. Economic development is something that we talk about all the time. Making our county the best place to live and work and locate a business is at the top of our agenda. And Congressman Schneider is a big help with a lot of that, with the infrastructure monies that we get. And that also goes back to federal funding. We spend millions of dollars to improve that stormwater infrastructure, and we want to make sure that we're open for business. It enables our residents to get to work when we're protecting our roadways, and it makes sure that our infrastructure is top-notch. And one project that would be at risk if these federal funds were frozen, federal funds that have already been promised, will be the Cedar Lake Realignment Project, which is an enormous project in the Round Lake area. Thanks to Congressman Schneider and our other representatives, Lake County was awarded almost $19 million through a RAISE grant to make major improvements in this area. It would help create new downtown business expansion opportunities. It would improve transportation mobility, that's motorized and non-motorized, and mitigate historic flooding issues and create a much safer area for our residents. It'll help cars and people move more efficiently, will drive economic growth and vitality to this neighborhood. And if those funds are frozen, that project stops. It's been a priority for decades. And that would be an enormous waste of time and money that's already been spent in the planning for this. So all of these investments in infrastructure and public health and safety equipment and job training, it could not be done without partnership, and that huge partner is the federal government. So I just want to make it clear that Lake County government applauds efforts to save taxpayer money. We're really proud of the strides that we've taken to reduce our reliance on property taxes, to eliminate redundant taxing bodies and share services with other government entities. But this latest effort does not feel like an effort in saving money and finding efficiencies. It feels like an effort to create chaos and instill fear. So we'll continue to work collaboratively on behalf of our residents, and we'll do everything we can to deliver services in a data-driven manner. And I want to be clear that every dollar that we receive back from the federal government is invested in improving the quality of life for the people living and working here. And a loss in those federal grant dollars would be absolutely devastating for us. And I just really want to say thanks again to Congressman Schneider for being a strong voice for us and bringing back some normalcy to government and making sure that we remember that the government is here to help people. And you have always been a strong champion for doing what's right. And I'm really grateful for your leadership. So thank you.